Zoe.
And you are listening to Sex Advice for Seniors. And welcome to all our new listeners who joined us after last week's very intoxicating episode about blowjobs, for which we had more comments than any other episode. And we went to a few chart positions on different podcast charts, I suspect, because lots of people want to hear old ladies talk about giving head. And why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they, I think? So yeah, now we're famous, internet famous. No, we're not really, but we will be eventually. We will be. So we thought today we would tackle the topic of reality TV and this wave of TV programs that have suddenly appeared to do with older people and dating. And that was prompted by a show that's come out this week called Golden Bachelor, which you have watched, Zoe.
I
Well,
have. Episode 1. We met all of the women who showed up to date this bachelor named Gary. He is a widower and he is absolutely lovely. What a charming man, really. So honest, and he has 3 daughters, and they're so supportive of him. He had a really sad story. He and his late wife bought their dream home right on a lake, and they were so excited. They moved in, they got all their boxes moved in, and she almost immediately started to become ill. And they didn't know what it was, and it looked like a flu, and she felt like crap. And then about, I don't know, a week later, it wasn't getting any better, and he said, I'm taking you to the doctor. And it turned out she had a systemic infection. They don't know exactly where she got it from, but she was septic. And within a week after she went to the hospital, she died. She never came out of the hospital.
Oh my
And
God.
here he is in their dream home with all of their boxes, and just devastated. They have him talking in the beginning of the show, and he gets teary, and he's just lovely. And this was a few years ago, so he has taken some time to heal. And then I guess he saw the advertisement for the Golden Bachelor, and he applied. His daughters, he talked to his daughters, and they were very, very supportive. And here he is, and he's just really could not be more attractive in it, like inside and out. It's not just looks. And he isn't.
And why do you think it is that he hasn't, like, in this period of time, he hasn't met somebody else? Because as we know, like, these widow guys, good-looking widow guys they are the ones that you want to get when you're an older person, right?
Because they're not right.
Normally they get snapped up. Like, why didn't the guy get snapped up? What was he doing? Hiding under a rock?
Well, I think he was healing.
Yeah.
I think he was recovering from the death of his lifelong
Yeah.
mate. And so I from the way they tell it, and who knows what happens in real life, but from the way they tell it, he saw this advertisement for The Bachelor, and and that opportunity came up, and it prompted him to say, maybe I'm ready.
Interesting. So now there's a whole bunch of chicks that want to be with this guy, and he's got to find out if he wants to be with any of them. Is that the premise of this?
That's the premise. It's the premise of The Bachelor. If anybody, has never seen The Bachelor, that's exactly the premise. Usually it's these young people who are, all of them are always extremely attractive and done up,
Yeah.
And so there's a bachelor or a bachelorette. The reverse, they do bachelorette seasons as well. So the one person is choosing between 30 people.
Oh my God.
And then they whittle it down. At the end of every episode, there's a rose ceremony, and you hand out roses to the people that you would like to stay. And it's a
Oh,
big, that is a very tense moment, and there's always a lot of tears. And yeah, so it's very, I would say usually people are in their 20s and 30s,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
always. And Gary rather is in his 70s. I think he's 72 or 73,
Wow. Yeah.
and the women are all in their 60s and 70s.
And they're all living in a house together. Is that it? Like, are they
They
all
are.
living? They are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I think
Wow.
the bachelor has his own area or his own house. He might live in a guest house on the property.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes, it all got shaken up during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so many of those seasons that happened during the pandemic happened in a resort that wasn't the Bachelor Mansion, which is located in Los Angeles, the Bachelor Mansion.
Oh,
Uh,
right.
it's somebody's actual real house, and they actually move out for the taping of the season
Oh my
and then move back in. And the production packs away. They move them out. They move all the furniture out and store it and then move it all back in and make the house back the way it was.
Amazing. That's crazy. I mean, I think it's so
Yeah.
interesting that for so many reasons. One is obviously we're starting to see, like, we've got the show My Mom, Your Dad here, where there's more couples being created rather than just one.
Right.
I don't think they're quite that old. They seem to be, from the episodes that I've seen clips of, seems to be people in their kind of 50s. I think so anyway. And the kids are kind of goading the kids get together and watch collectively whilst their parents are getting, together or doing stuff. So there's this sort of double-sided thing that happens where the kids are watching their parents and talking to their peers about their parents and their own relationships to their parents. So I think it's slightly different, but in terms of a format. But nevertheless, I think it's really interesting that we are now accepting the fact that somebody in their 70s can date, can have
Yeah.
can have a sex life, can get married again, right? It's not, the kids aren't going, "Oh, but that was the love of your life, Dad, and I don't see you ever being with anybody." They're going, "No, I want you to be happy and I want you to do that." And I think that's really quite a societal shift.
Yeah. I
Um,
I I think so too. And I think that it's I mean they even the Golden Bachelor kissed a few women on camera, like
yeah,
lovely, nice kisses, like making out. And it's really, I mean, I'll tell you something. You don't see that very often on
yeah,
TV. You just don't. It's almost like, I mean, there is this sort of cultural narrative historically that old people don't have sex.
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
It
and
was,
kissing on television, like, amazing, really.
yeah,
And
yeah.
nobody's going like ick, which is unbelievable. It's
Well,
unbelievable,
somebody might be going ick,
probably.
but I think, I actually, I don't know. I should have looked it up before we started recording today, but it's very popular. Like people are really, really watching
Yeah,
this season because everybody's so curious, and it's also, they're different. The
yeah,
people act differently than the youngsters that are on The
yeah,
Bachelor.
yeah,
There's a lot more dignity and compassion, and I mean we'll
yeah,
see as the season progresses.
yeah.
um but for the most part I thought that it was lovely and heartwarming,
Hmm.
to watch these people.
Definitely. And there's also the sense that for older people, when they go on these shows, it's not because they got want to be internet famous. They're not looking to be the next Instagram influencer and make $100,000. a day or whatever. They're actually people who are genuinely keen to meet somebody and are using this very unusual vehicle, the TV, to do it. I think it's enormously brave and also making themselves so vulnerable when for so many people that I know, they really are reluctant to be that vulnerable in public, you know. It's quite a brave and bold move to do something like this.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that I think obviously is different is that by the time you're in your 60s and 70s, you're not, I mean, it's important to be physically attracted to your partner,
Sure.
but you're not basing your choices on the physical appearance nearly as much. He
Yeah.
talks a lot about how he's looking for that spark. The host asks him, like what are you looking for? What is it that
Yeah.
you're keeping an eye out for? And he said, he said, there's that look, that
Yeah.
that connection that you have when you look into each other's eyes. He said it's like, he said, I'm really hoping to find that. And you can see him connecting with a couple of the women in that way. Like, it's really sweet. So what they do is he stands in front of the mansion, and one by one these limousines pull up, and there are a group of women, I think, in each limousine. It's not, there aren't like 30 or 40 limousines, but so a group comes up, but one at a time the women come out and they walk up and they introduce themselves, and they have, I think they're coached to have like a little bit of a gimmick or something. Like one woman one woman led him in her mindfulness sort of routine, and they breathed and they bleeped out. I think she sort of breathes in, and on the exhale she says fuck. And he did it with her. They bleeped it out, and it was cute. It was funny. Um, and one woman flashed him. She had like a coat on, and she like opened it and flashed. Like,
Oh
so
my
it's a
God.
little bit silly and a little bit contrived, but it is TV, and we do need to have an entertainment factor. Um, and then they go in and they have a cocktail party, and then you get to see him mingling and lots of conversations and sweet moments of connection, and then he hands out a certain number of roses. Um,
Yeah.
and then some women say their goodbyes who didn't get picked, and now we're off. I'm looking forward to tomorrow nights. It's on Thursday nights in the States.
Wow. I mean, I think this is my idea of hell. I remember going once to a singles event that a friend of mine was organizing. It's quite glamorous. And I remember walking into this room, which was significantly more women than men, significantly. And I looked at this sea of women who were mostly blonde, bleach blonde, mostly, in really good shape, and some with clearly a bit of augmentation going on. And I just remember looking at that room and thinking, this is like a dating app for real. This is my competition that I'm seeing. Like,
Yeah.
normally we don't see our competition because they're off.
Yeah.
The guys are swiping and doing stuff. So, like, to have a show where essentially you're competing against other women for the attention of a man. Oh my gosh, there's so much wrong with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are a lot of people who feel like The Bachelor is terrible for that
Yeah,
reason, like
yeah,
terrible, and people behave really badly. I mean,
yeah.
it can get very um
Bitchy.
catty and
Yeah,
bitchy and sneaky. Yeah, it can. I mean, and people are you put all these people that are living together. It's not even like they're living separately, but they're actually living together for I don't know how long it takes, a month or two, like
Yeah.
several weeks.
Yeah.
And so I'm very much looking forward to seeing what happens when the women who are living together are older and have more
Yeah,
wisdom.
exactly. Yeah,
And
exactly.
I mean, it's not that every older woman is behaves well,
No.
you know. Um, I don't know. It'll be really fascinating.
Yeah.
The other piece of it is that they have overnight dates at the end. The last three contestants left have overnight dates, like where they have a dinner and then they can spend the night together. Now, you don't always have sex when you spend the night together. And
Yeah.
for the first many, many, many seasons, they would say they wouldn't talk about it. We wouldn't really know. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
left to our own imagination what they did in there.
Yeah.
And I always felt like probably most of the people just spent the night talking and getting to know each other better off camera, and probably didn't have sex. But there were some people who did have sex. It came out in the tabloids
Yeah.
and People magazine, which is tabloid light.
Yeah.
Um, and um, and then it was a big conversation, and then there were some bachelors who said, I'm one recent one said, I'm not going to have sex in the fantasy suite, where I'm just putting it out there, no sex. And then he broke his own rule, and so then he created this mess.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
it was awful. And one of the bachelorettes said, "You made that decision for me." Like the not sleeping. The
Yeah.
front runner said, "You took my agency away from me by telling me that I wasn't going to have sex." And
Yeah, yeah.
it was an interesting conversation. I appreciated the sort of opportunity to watch that play out, even though it was
Yeah.
sort of horrifying and messy um
Yeah, for
and
sure.
humiliating for all of the people involved to be talking about whether or not they had sex in the fantasy suite on national television. Um,
Yeah,
but so
and this is and again, look, this is an older man, right? I mean, let's be honest here. Most men in their 70s may have some aspect of not obviously not all of them, but there may be some sexual dysfunction, possibly. There might be some issues with some of the women, possibly, right? Like we've spoken to enough people around sexual health and what goes on in later life and everything. I mean, it's such a huge topic. And I don't know, you know, how many of these women, what they're looking for, right? I mean,
yes,
they're not looking to procreate. They're not looking to have babies. They're not looking for any of that. Some of them might not be looking for a sexual relationship. Some of them might want a sexual relationship, right?
yeah,
But or some degree of it, and we don't know how. We don't know. I mean, one of the things that always strikes me at this age, and okay, we're probably a bit more out there than many other people in this regard, but this is the time of life where you can make decisions about how you want to have your relationships. Now this guy's had probably a loving monogamous relationship, and now he's in a house with 30 women, some of whom may not have been monogamous, some of whom may have done some crazy shit, right? I mean,
yeah,
I'm assuming any good casting director is going to find 30 women with a very diverse range of experiences,
yes,
some of
yes.
which may blow this guy's mind and other parts of his body, right? So,
One
but
of them hung out with Prince and was the I can't remember which song it was. He wrote a song. She inspired a song, sexy.
not Little Red Corvette, no.
No, I can't remember which one. But she was like, you know, a contemporary of Prince. I think she lived in Minneapolis in that area, and she was dressed very. I mean, she looks way younger than she actually is. She's 61, I think,
Yeah.
um, or 60 or 61, and she was wearing like kind of a strapless mini dress, you know, very sort of sexy,
Yeah.
something that she might have worn when she was 30.
Yeah.
And she seemed lovely and nice and so far.
Yeah.
But she, you know, and then they had very sort of conservative looking
Yeah.
women with white hair, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that looked very different ilk.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's very it's fascinating, and I think, you know, one thing that really that I loved is that as he was standing in front of the mansion receiving all these women one by one, the angle that they were shooting, at least half the shots, revealed his hearing aid.
Oh, interesting.
And
Yeah.
it made me so it that to me, I mean, maybe I'm not typical, but I it made me attracted to him. Like I
Yeah.
love that. It's so
Yes.
real and so not what the younger version presents. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah. Yeah.
most of them are augmented. Most of their maybe that's not fair, but a good number of them are augmented and tanned and enhanced in various ways. There are
Yeah.
also not a variety of women. They all look like they sort of some of them in the past in the younger version, some of them have been concert pianists and some of them have been dental assistants and some of them have been marketing executives and some of them have been secretaries and some of them have been influencers,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they're all dressed and done up in a very similar way. And so it was really nice to see the breadth of individuality, you know, in the older women.
But then the flip side that I'm curious to see, and just being totally cynical. So, my experience with men, similar kinds of men who have been in very long relationships, and maybe their partner died, or something tragic happened, or they're not there anymore, whatever, is that once they've gotten past that, quite a few of them, um, yes, they may be presented with a load of lovely women who present in all different ways. But I'm curious to see whether this guy ends up with the one that he says he has the spark with,
Yeah.
or the one that he's most physically attracted to right now.
Yeah.
Right? Because my experience is that they will immediately, that the lower half of the body does have some degree of power at this early stage of the relationship, and maybe making irrational decisions, um, for a period of time until
It's very I mean, it's
until
very
until the rational brain kicks in and goes, God, I mean, I know she's gorgeous, but fuck, she's boring, or whatever.
yeah. I feel as though all of these women are pretty attractive,
Right.
and none
Okay.
of them are it would be what would be interesting, I mean, I'm not proposing this, it would be horrible and I would be furious if they did this. But it would be interesting if they had some 40-year-olds mixed in.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's what I think would be fascinating to see, you know, what he'd
Yeah.
choose. But that would just be like nobody should be subjected to any of that. It's not a suggestion. I'm not suggesting that. I'd be up in arms. I'd be writing the network. But
Yeah.
that would be very curious. You know, at the end of the of that opening night cocktail party, he gives this is in every season, there's a first impression rose.
Yeah.
And he gave the first impression rose to a woman she's in her 60s. She has a She had a guitar with her. She was playing music, and she's a DJ.
All
She's like
right.
a DJ on a radio station, and then she has her own. And it was, they had a connection for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
She
yeah.
wasn't my front runner. She wouldn't have gotten my first impression rose, but she was lovely and
Yeah.
sort of halfway between. She was one of the more down to earth, real, very pretty woman, but sort of like um natural looking.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a guy that I'm hanging out with has said that he goes on, sites looking for women in their 50s and 60s, and he says there's just not very many of them. He says that most of the women that he gets presented to are in their 40s. So I think there's also something there is something to be said for a guy in his 70s looking for somebody in their 50s and 60s in this way, because maybe more women are likely to come forward in this way than they would be in some other ways. I don't know. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of women in their 40s that are still kind of quite keen to meet people, and then there is a bit of a drop off. Certainly I know amongst my friends there's a lot of people who just don't want to meet a guy. They're just not interested anymore. They're just not that
Yeah.
bothered. So they just think it's all too much of a pain in the neck. So I think from that point of view, it's also just quite interesting that they've managed to round up all these people who are keen to be on television. But I guess that's the States. There's
Uh,
because here, like I said, they seem to be a bit younger, on the younger end. And yeah, and it's more like a family kind of, the whole family is sort of involved in the matchmaking in a way. They're not really involved. The parents are still doing the matchmaking, but the kids are commenting on their parents' choices, and and a bit of their backstory, and so filling in some of the blanks that might be going on there. But I think, look, overall, I actually, with Peter, we were contacted by a casting director about being like a dating expert on a similar type show that I don't think got commissioned. So clearly there's an appetite for these kinds of programs now, and I suspect if these shows are popular, we're just going to see more of them, because if the viewing figures reflect that people want to watch a bunch of old people dating and getting it on, then they'll just give us old people dating and getting it on.
yeah. Yeah.
And we are the TV viewers, let's face it. I mean, more old people watch TV probably than younger people.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
they're just reflecting back on who's watching telly, really.
Yes, for sure. And I predict that this is going to be a brand new leg of the franchise. I think
Probably.
that we're going to have Golden Bachelorettes. We're going to have,
Yeah.
I think it's probably going to be very popular. And that I'm thrilled about.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I have some reservations for before you start blowing up my inbox about how miserable and sexist and sensationalized The Bachelor is. I get that. And if we're going to have that form of entertainment, which clearly we are, it's been decades, um, might as well have it represent a broader swath of the population. And
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said, it'll be interesting to see how older women navigate this potential minefield of competing for a man's attention, how much they choose to bond between themselves and sort of in a camaraderie, like whoever gets him, and let's just have fun here and not worry too much about whether we're going to end up with this guy at the end or not, because like
right.
look, it's as much about them as it is about him, right? I mean, not
Oh,
all these
yes.
yeah, these women aren't going to all want to be with him, and probably some of them are going to have one date with him and just think, oh, you're fucking boring, I don't want to be with you, or I'm
Well,
not attracted to you,
that's the
or
thing.
you
That's
know
the thing that's always so interesting with the young version, which is the only one we've watched play out so far. And that is that it feels to me like inevitably these people, whether it's the men vying for the bachelorette or the other
yeah,
way around, the person who they're going for, who's making the choices, is put on a pedestal, and
Um,
these for simplicity's sake right now I'm going to talk about it as The Bachelor. So the
yeah,
women that are vying for this guy's affection, um they act like, always, every season. I haven't watched every season, but I've watched enough of them to know that they constantly think that he is, nobody's ever, none of the contestants, the women, what am I trying to say here? The women don't show up and have a date and say, you're boring.
yeah.
It's always that they want to be there, that they want
Wow.
this guy.
Yeah.
And that's something that is not realistic at all.
No.
I mean, just because he's the bachelor and you want to, is it that you want to win the thing?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
it
yeah.
that you think this is the person of your dreams? Like,
Yeah.
the statistically, that's impossible.
No.
So it is a little bit, I sort of suspect that it might go different when they're older.
Yeah. And wouldn't that be awesome if it did?
Wouldn't
Wouldn't that
it?
be great if like a woman turned up and said, do you know what? I'm not really feeling it. Like
Yeah,
it sounded, he looks good on paper, but we just didn't have any connection. And
yeah,
I'm going to go home to my cats and my family and all my friends and all the shit that I was hanging out with quite happily doing before. And
yeah,
yeah, that one's just not for me. I mean,
yeah,
I think that would give them so much power and it would give a different dynamic to the whole thing and also make people recognize, we've got a choice here. Like
yeah,
it's not all about this guy. Of course, he's the center of attention and I understand that, but we've all got a choice. At the end of
yeah,
the day, we've all got a choice. We can walk away, we can say yay, we can say no, whatever we want, you know? And I
yeah,
think and I think that's will be interesting. I'm interested I'm interested to see if that's what happens because that'd be awesome. I'd love a woman to say, not really feeling it.
yeah. Historically, a handful of people have gone home, have chosen to leave, but there's always an excuse of like, I have a kid,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I better go, or like, I need to get back to my job, and
Yeah,
I can't afford to lose. Like, they've never, to my knowledge,
yeah.
they haven't had a conversation ever where someone, male or female, says to the lead, um, I'm not feeling it. Best of luck. I think you'll do great. You've got great women here, and I'm out.
I'm out, right?
Yeah.
Also, that woman becomes so much more attractive.
All right.
Immediately, the unobtainable one suddenly
Yeah.
goes up about 500 notches, right? So,
Mhm, mhm.
so I'd love someone to just use that as a tactic. Like,
Yeah.
no, no, but I really like you. Please stay. Nah, actually, I'm really going to go.
Yeah.
I'm out. I'm out. I'm out. I've got better things to do than this. You're not really my type. I thought you were, but no, you're not. So yeah,
Yeah.
or yeah, your feet are small or whatever. That's just a joke, by the way. I'm not sexist or anything when it comes to feet. Anyway, it's been lovely talking about the Golden Bachelor, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you next week when we're not going to talk about that. We are going to. It's not next week; it's the week after that. We've got Caroline, I think. Yeah, it's the week after that. We are next week. We're going to talk about when Zoe decided to visit a dom, and
Yeah.
and I have no idea what happened, and we're going to find that out. So stay tuned, and Zoe, go and get yourself better because she's not feeling
Thank
so
you.
well.
Yeah, I'm a little under the weather, but I'll be good in a couple days.
All right, bye, folks.
Bye bye.